Greeting Earth beings. Happy spring. So excited. There's a new season happening in this world right now. Lots of changes. But what I wanted to talk about today is one of my favorite subjects, and that is the difference between science and things that aren't science, and what is really science, and why that's important to you, especially if you're a woman. My name is Teresa Schley Valenzuela. I am a psychic, medium, speaker, teacher, author, coach. I've been studying in personal growth and human potential for 34 years now. I've studied everything from Hawaiian spirituality to shamanic traditions to, what was the last thing I was thinking about? Sacred sexuality. And now I'm in a 1.5-ish long sex, love, and relationship coaching course for certification in that. I also have something else really cool coming up, but I can't announce it yet because it's not official. So for today, I want to talk about the experience that women have when they go to a doctor and how this translates out historically into a bunch of other stuff. Okay, so I don't know if you knew about this, but like there's a pandemic right now. And what I hear a lot from people is there's the camp that goes, well, I believe in science and I'm just going to follow the science. And then there's the other camp that says they're questioning things like, where are we getting our information? Is it accurate? Is it valid? So whenever I'm in a conundrum, I usually go to the dictionary because I'm a writer. Maybe that's where this habit started. So I went to the dictionary because I said, when people talk about science, what do they mean exactly? Because I'll be honest with you, I've had a lot of experiences in my life where quote unquote science, like Western medicine, which is supposed to be the pinnacle of science, has failed me. One of the situation is when my first baby died when she was born. Science couldn't catch the fact that there was something wrong with her development. Science couldn't really help me when she died. So I was left with a lot of questions. And that is one of the many things that led me on a path to find answers. And the answers that I sought were not answered by the scientific community. Also, I have a brain abnormality that means my brain doesn't process sleep properly. And science couldn't help me there either, because it took me 11 years to get a diagnosis. And the diagnosis is literally saying that science has no idea what's wrong with me. They admit that there's something wrong with me because I've done a bunch of tests with like electrodes hooked up to my brain, but they don't know what it is. That's literally the diagnosis. It's called idiopathic, which means we don't know. So when people talk about science, I'm like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? So I looked it up in the dictionary. Here's the definition of science. This is the Cambridge Dictionary, which is like Cambridge and Oxford are the two British, holy grail institutions of education. Okay, science is a noun. The definition of science is knowledge from the careful study of the structure and behavior of the physical world, especially by watching, measuring, and doing experiments, and the development of theories to describe the results of these activities. So I looked at physical world because I wanted to be sure. So the physical world is matter. So essentially what this definition, Cambridge Dictionary definition, is saying that science is basically studying the physical world by watching, measuring, and doing experiments, and then developing theories, which are ideas, explanations, to describe the results of these observations. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like parenting. Actually, that actually sounds like being human. Actually, that sounds like being a sane human. So in other words, as a sane human being, I have gained knowledge from carefully studying the structure and behavior of the physical world. Here's an example. If I touch a hot stove, my hand will burn. Then you're going to watch, measure, and do experiments, and then develop the theories to describe the results. So you're probably not going to develop an experiment to see how much your hand will burn when you put it on the stove. But if you're a parent, for instance, you're observing your child, which is of the physical world, your child is matter, and you're going to try different things to see what works, right? In relationships, don't you try different things to see what works? And when you're dealing with another matter structure, like another human being, like not your first girlfriend, but your second one, you're going to observe what she's doing and develop a theory to describe a result of the activities. And you're going to bank that, right? by careful observation, I've noticed that this girlfriend likes it when I do this and doesn't like it when I do that. So that's my theory. And I'm going to apply the theory going forward. So science is like just living. And then my question is, when we're talking about scientific experiments, for instance, if we're putting together, I don't know, like maybe a vaccine, and we're doing scientific experiments for it, my question is always, who's paying for it? Because science isn't cheap, okay? Science in air quotes, which is the science that you're probably thinking about, where like you think of the guys in the white lab coats, that shit ain't cheap. So who's going to pay for that? And can we honestly say that the person paying for it doesn't have a vested interest in the outcome of it? This is why when people talk about science, I'm not buying it, because most of it's corrupt because of the fact that there's a conflict of interest. Now, if we go to quantum theory, physics really, the observer affects the observed. That's a quality of quantum particles. So that's quantum particles are part of matter, part of the physical world. So when you're creating an experiment and you're observing it, you're the observer. You're going to affect the observed, which is the scientific experiment. So the observation of the experiment affects the outcome on the quantum level, which means it affects it on the fully blown physical level. So when we're talking about science, I understand that we want to create a structure to define this thing where we talk about doing experiments, but it's not the Holy Grail and it's not God. Now, the opposite of science, when you're talking to a scientist, they're going to go, well, it's not science, it's anecdotal evidence, right? Anecdotal is the opposite of science to your average scientist. What's anecdotal evidence? Anecdotal, also a noun, is evidence in the form of stories that people tell about what's happened to them. So do you get what's going on here? To people who believe in science, it's either science or it's a story that somebody made up. And if it's a story that somebody made up, it's not valid. But if it's just you observing shit and making educated guesses about the observations that you made, that's somehow more valid. Now, how this affects women is that women have an innate, and by the way, men have this too, they just don't talk about it as much. Women have an innate sensibility about their bodies. They know, I'm getting chills, they know when something's not right. They know when they're somewhere and they're getting a vibration or a feeling back from someone or something and it's not right. Actually, all human beings do this. Women talk about it more. And that's intuition. Intuition is more of a sensory experience than it is a mind experience. I talk about this in my Bloom Your Intuition, in my course, my online course, Bloom Your Intuition, which you can access if you click the link in my bio. It's totally affordable course which will teach you how to use your intuition. And I do talk about intuition from the unconscious mind, but it really is, your body really is your unconscious mind. So women have an experience of their body that is a felt experience. In the course that I'm taking right now, this 1.5-year-long certification, we talk about the felt sense. And I don't remember the author that coined that phrase, but so it's a felt sense. So it's a sense that you have and you feel it. And women know things about their hormones. Women will tell you they just have a feeling about things. They have a feeling about what's going on with their bodies. And what happens is they go to the doctor and they tell the doctor, which in most cases is a man, and they say, hey, something's wrong with me. I don't feel good. I don't feel right. Maybe my hair's falling out. I'm having irregular periods, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's my hormones. Now, when your average doctor hears that, they go, anecdotal evidence, right? And then they go do their research and look at the symptoms and do what they do, and they say, whatever you're saying doesn't correspond to the scientific experiments that people have made in the past that are in this book that I go by, from which I choose diagnosis. Since your anecdotal evidence is not in my little book, you're making it up in your head. You're perfectly fine. You can go home now. Okay, so then you go back and you're like, I don't know, doctor, I still don't feel good. This is like the story I hear from so many women. And then the doctor orders tests, and what happens with tests is if you're following insurance, actually most testing facilities do this where there's a code for a disease state. I shouldn't say that about testing facilities. Testing facilities just do the test. But if you're talking about insurance, insurance is looking for a disease state, a disease state. So if you talk about, for instance, the thyroid, let's say it's a thyroid issue, you're either going to have Graves' disease, which is on one end of the spectrum. Like, I don't remember if Graves' disease is too much or too little, but it's a disease state that is on one end of the spectrum. And then you have a thyroid condition that's on the other end of the spectrum. So if you have way, way, way low thyroid or way, way, way high thyroid, those are considered disease states. Each one of those states is applied a code, and the insurance can say, oh, okay, you have one of these diseases. We will now pay for your care. But the problem is vibrant health of the thyroid, let's say it's right here, a lot of people, and especially women, fall into this category right here where you're not vibrantly healthy, you really don't feel good, you're over here, but because you're not a disease state, there's no diagnosis, and therefore it's a story that you're making up in your head. So what happens at that point is the doctors will say, gosh, I don't know why you're making up these stories in your head, but if you want, we can give you some antidepressants, and they hand that shit out like candy. So this is why doctors often think women are silly, because we have a felt sense of our bodies. We present with what's called anecdotal evidence, which is stories we tell, and it's not accepted by this holy grail of science. Now, think about it. Medicine as we know it, the modern version of medicine, really started around the Victorian era. And that's the time historically that birthed patriarchy, colonialism, misogyny. None of these things support a woman trusting and knowing what's going on in her body. So if you're a woman who's dealing, this clock is so loud. If you're a woman who's dealing with these types of things, if you're going to the doctor and you're getting this feedback to you, what you need to do is find a new doctor. You need to find a doctor who's going to actually listen to you, because if you don't, you're never going to get better and you're not going to get the care you need. It sucks, but it's so true. You need to find a doctor who's going to listen to what you have to say. I found this really great doctor one time. She dealt with hormonal stuff, and I went in there a couple times and said, this is how I feel, and I think this is related to this. And it only made sense to me. And she goes, well, if that's how you feel, it's probably right. So let's take a look at that. And I was like, oh my God, did I just hear that? So there needs to be more doctors out there who feel that way. And I'm here to tell you, if you're a woman who's suffering something that there doesn't seem to be a specific diagnosis for, believe it, it's real, it's really happening. You can get better. You just may have to look out of traditional science, because it's much too narrow for a vibrantly healthy experience, especially for a woman. So that's some of my knowledge sent your way with love. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. I also do one-on-one sessions. I love sharing my wisdom one-on-one. I am a psychic and a medium, and so I work with my guides on different dimensions and levels. I always pull them in for my sessions. They actually do most of the work, but I can share that with you, and I love doing that and get some amazing results with my clients. So click the link in my bio that says one-on-one sessions if you're interested. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you have a beautiful day.